Dawn slid in over the wetlands like the hand of a slow-moving pianist, brushing mist from the cypress knees and Spanish moss. Boudreaux the crawfish trapper was out early, punting through milk-grey water and humming a half-remembered Buddy Bolden riff. Mid-song he stopped, pole halfway in the marsh. Just ahead, a cluster of alligators lay untroubled by his skiff. Snouts lifted as if sampling invisible fragrance. He flipped his Bannaskicks around, snots lifted as if sampling invisible fragrance. Their scaly tails swayed, not randomly, but in 4/4 time. One cracked its jaw on the 2 and the 4. Another slapped the surface with its tail for a backbeat. When Boudreaux's nervous humming hit a squeaky high note, the nearest gator rolled yellow eyes that seemed almost human, then answered with a low, guttural bellow shaped suspiciously like a bluesy trombone glissando. Everyone in Orléans Parish had heard the tale. The greatest jazz musicians never truly died. They sloughed off old flesh like snakes and slid into new skins, cold-blooded and armoured, dancing eternal second lines beneath the bayou. On certain nights, if the moon was lean and the tide was slack, you could hear an entire brass band crooning from the reeds. Most folks dismissed the story as one more swamp-soaked myth. Marcus Longslide LaRue knew better, because the first trombone he ever owned came from the bayou, literally, pulled from between an alligator's jaws. He was 12 then, a skinny kid raised in Trems, where porch columns were painted the colour of sherbet and music floated like magnolia scent. During a church picnic, Marcus wandered too far, chasing dragonflies until the ground grew spongy with peat. An enormous gator broke the surface, clutching a slick brass instrument in its teeth. Instead of fleeing, Marcus had stared, mesmerized by the way sunrise polished the horn. The gator, eyes ancient and sorrowful, eased nearer and laid the trombone on a tussock as gently as a midwife places a newborn in its mother's arms. Then it hissed a melody Marcus couldn't yet name, Sidney Bechet's Petite Fleur, before sliding away. That horn became Marcus's life, his legend and his curse. Now, 15 years later, Mardi Gras sat 1 week off, and the city buzzed louder than cicadas after rain. Beads already dangled from balcony ironwork, muffaletta oil pooled on corners, and brass bands practiced riffs so hot the humid air steamed. Inside the dapple gloom of Le Vieux Carré Bar, Marcus adjusted his battered slide and tried to ignore the newspaper headline lying atop the piano. Cemetery trombone of Big Belly. Sid Dupree. Vanishes. Sid Dupree, nicknamed Big Belly for his capacity to swallow whole choruses of blues, had died in 1953 when his riverboat sank. But his legend never went under. Buck said he'd been the first to invent trombone growls that could shatter cheap bar mirrors or seduce uptown debutantes across a dance floor. His custom silver-plated con had rested above ground in St. Louis Cemetery, no one until last night. Now it was missing, and grave dirt lay scattered like spilled coffee grounds. Marcus understood what that meant. Every decade or so the dead demanded stage time. Tradition whispered, never published, held that if a living musician couldn't outplay the returning master, the spirit kept control of the city's sound for another era. Mardi Gras would become a funeral dirge under undead leadership, and New Orleans might never swing the same. The guardians of that quiet covenant were the alligators, jazzmen reborn. They chose the challenger by gifts left at water's edge. That childhood trombone had not been charity. It had been a calling card. The bar door banged open, and a gust of river air brought in Mama Celeste, regal in a turban woven with bottle green beads. She looked half voodoo queen, half schoolteacher. "Boy," she said, her voice rustling like palmetto fronds, "you going to sit there sweating, or you going to accept the duel?" Marcus swallowed. "You really believe Dupree's back?" "You're never left," Celeste replied. "He'd just been waiting on you to grow some breath in them lungs. Midnight tomorrow at Congo Square. All living brass already heard the summons. You win, you headline the Rex Parade. You lose, well, we all play underwater for a while. Marcus had performed before governors, but the prospect of facing a legend whose very bones vibrated with forgotten notes made his palms leap. Celeste slid a sachet across the bar. "Gris for courage," she said, "and a word of advice. The dead can't improvise new stories. They only retell the old ones. You give him something he never heard, he'll crumble like dry rue." He spent the day pacing Royal Street, slide positions ghosting in front of him like invisible rungs on Jacob's ladder. Late afternoon, he slipped behind the wrought-iron gate of Lafitte Greenway and into the marginal, half-wild stretch leading to Bayou St. John. Dragonflies still flickered there, as they had when he was 12. He kneeled at the edge and waited. Water parted. Out rose a gator bigger than a beer truck, scales crusted with algae the colour of tarnished brass. It regarded Marcus, then opened its mouth. Inside, balanced on its tongue like a communion wafer, lay a bone-white mouthpiece. Marcus reached with shaking fingers. When the gator's jaw shut, it wasn't a snap of hunger, but applause. The beast submerged. Concentric ripples carried a baseline out toward Lake Pontchartrain, felt in his bones, not ears. Under a flickering street lamp, he examined the piece. Polished tibia, maybe human, maybe not. Carved with 3 glyphs, clef, crescent moon, and lazy alligator tail. He slid it into his horn. The instrument vibrated as though woken by a lover's touch, producing a low C so rich it made stray cats arch their backs in ecstasy. Marcus rehearsed until stars reflected off the canal like spilled glitter. He didn't practice scales, he practiced stories. Steamboat engines wheezing after Prohibition-era rum runs. Stoop kids double-dutching on cracked sidewalks, the quick silver squeal of streetcars. He practiced the metallic taste of heartbreak, the warm dough of beignets at 3 a.m. Every shared secret of the city. By dawn his lips bled, and the bone mouthpiece tasted of salt and iron. Fat Tuesday's Eve arrived, draped in purple-green gold, policed by costumed revelers. Congo Square bustled under string lights wound through live oaks. Skeleton masks and feathered boas turned the crowd into a moving kaleidoscope. At the center stood a flatbed truck masquerading as a bandstand. Ringed by flickering hurricane lamps, 4 judges waited, Kermit Ruffins, Trombone Shorty, Irma Thomas, and, to Marcus's shock, a 5th seat left empty, save for a coiled gator tail draped across it like a sash. A hush fell, and cold seeped into bones despite the Gulf humidity. From between iron gates emerged big-belly Sid Dupree. Death hadn't softened him. He still carried the girth hinted by his nickname, but his skin was parchment grey, stretched over cheekbones too sharp for the living. Eyes glittered jet black. A second line of fireflies hovered above his Homburg like a crown. Slung at his side was the stolen con, but its bell shone like a freshly minted coin. Dupree raised his hand in a lazy wave, and somewhere a trumpet moaned a wolf whistle. Irma Thomas spoke first. "Gentlemen," she said, voice resolute but trembling, "standard duel rules. 3 choruses each, alternating leads, up-tempo blues in F, improvisation permitted. No physical interference." She glanced at Dupree. "And sugar, no biting." Dupree's laughter sounded like woodwind reeds snapping. "Sure, I only bite when the flavor's worth it." Marcus stepped forward, horn already at his lips, and felt his grandfather's St. Christopher medal thump against his chest like a second heartbeat. He nodded to the drummer. A living man this time, thank heaven, some neutral party to keep tempo. Sticks clicked 4 counts. The undead legend took the downbeat. Dupree's first note slid out syrupy, low enough to stir mud in the riverbed. He climbed through the scale with sluggish menace, like molasses goaded uphill. Half a chorus in, he unleashed a run so complex it tangled around the drummer's hi-hat sizzle, yanked it, then let it snap back like elastic. Onlookers gasped, as though wind had been knocked from their lungs. Cheap plastic cups trembled in mid-air. A toddler hugged her ears and cried without tears. Marcus inhaled, the whole world it seemed, and answered. He began, not at F, but at the memory of F, a microtone under, sour as early light through stained glass, a place where note and silence wrestle. Then he slid up, kissing the in-between pitches until he landed square. The bone mouthpiece tingled, and sound leapt like sparks off a grinding wheel. He didn't match Dupree's virtuosity. He sidestepped it, channeling alley cats, calliope whistles, a preacher's hoarse hallelujah from a shotgun shack. Every fourth bar he added a single high squeal, bright as Mardi Gras beads hitting asphalt, daring the dead to chase fresh glitter. Round 2. Dupree's cheeks ballooned. With each exhalation, fog chilled the stage. Grass underfoot whitened with frost. He blew a camouflaged quotation of St. James' Infirmary, morphing it into a sinister tango, then hammered pedal notes so deep they rattled fillings loose. His spit valve dripped something that looked like ink. Audience members coughed, tasting cemetery dust. Marcus forced himself not to glance away. Celeste's warning echoed. The dead retell the old stories. Instead of responding note for note, he leaned backward and let his horn speak lazy, understated lines. Space enough between phrases for cicadas, ship horns, distant calliope waltzes. Into those gaps he inserted polyrhythms stolen from bounce music, from second-line footwork, from trap beats shaking club speakers along Decatur Street. He quoted nobody. He invented everybody. By the final bar, he slid into a growl so tender it felt like velvet over broken glass, and Dupree's eyes flickered confusion or anger, Marcus couldn't tell. Final chorus. Sweating river water, Dupree tilted his con. The bone mouthpiece Marcus held warmed. He sensed the Gators at the edge of the square, watching from the shadows with unblinking, diplomatic eyes. Dupree inhaled, expanding like a thundercloud. The note that poured out was a wail of entire funerals, yellow fever burials, flood victims, whole neighborhoods razed by progress. His slide whipped forward, sound morphed into sirens, kettle whistles, train brakes screaming into black tunnels. The high register crackled, then burst into ultrasonic shards. A lamp shattered, raining glass. The crowd swayed, drunk on fear. When the noise ceased, Dupree leaned on his trombone like a cane. A grin split his grey face. With rotten charisma, he tipped his hat, certain he'd won. Marcus nearly believed him. His arms trembled, his lips felt like raw meat. But from somewhere deep, a place below lungs, below marrow rose, the memory of that picnic long ago. A swamp morning, a gift place gentle as a promise, a reptile's mournful rendition of Petite Fleur. He remembered how that melody had haunted him, how it felt unfinished, pleading. So he lifted his horn and began, softly with Petite Fleur. The dead had told it. The living would retell it differently. He kept the skeleton of the melody, but reharmonized it with chords borrowed from gospel shout music, Duke Ellington substitutions, even fragments of Japanese pentatonic scales he'd heard while streaming world jazz. Mid-phrase, he wove in counterpoint, whistled through his teeth, letting the slide answer the mouth whistle in a call and responser older than cotton fields. Every so often, he'd milk a note until it bent, cracked, and reformed, the way levees break, then get rebuilt. Around him, the air warmed. Frost retreated. Fireflies returned, blinking triplets. The empty judge's chair creaked. The gator tail beat slow applause. Marcus closed his eyes and pushed toward a note he'd never played. A pitch he suspected might not fit on any chromatic scale. Lips aflame, he overshot, undershot, then located it. A suspended, shimmering blue between major and minor, where heartbreak and hope coexist. He held it, nurturing the vibration until streetlights hummed in sympathetic resonance. Audience members forgot to breathe. When he released, the note traveled up through branches, through clouds, perhaps straight to whatever heaven would have jazzed once Judgment Day booked its band. Silence fell, absolute yet full. Like a Sabbath. Dupree lowered his horn. For the first time, uncertainty haunted undead eyes. Wind picked up. His Homburg skittered away, revealing a bald scalp etched with swamp moss patterns. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg one more chorus, but no sound emerged. Only the faint wheeze of exhaustion. The bone mouthpiece in Marcus's trombone pulsed warm, then cooled, as though satisfied duty had been met. Kermit Ruffins rose. "Ain't nothing else to judge," he said. "Long Slide LaRue takes the crown." Applause exploded. Hands, claws, fins. Maybe some came from shadows where no humans stood. Brass bands in waiting struck up, "Do what you wanna," and colour returned to costumes like someone had turned the saturation dial. Dupree stared at Marcus. Slowly he unscrewed the silver mouthpiece from his con and tossed it underhand. Marcus caught it without thinking. It weighed barely anything, like papier-mâché memories. Dupree's body began to sag, bones telescoping inward, skin glossed over, organless, until his silhouette looked reptilian. With a final glancesome cocktail of envy, respect, and relief, he turned, crawled between iron gates, and vanished into moon-puddled darkness. Morning draped itself over Bourbon Street in strands of golden hangover. Floats lined up, bass drums thumped heartbeat tempos, and Marcus perched atop the lead float Rex himself had insisted. Around his neck lay beads, doubloons, stuffed toy Gators. In his trombone case, 2 mouthpieces rested side by side, 1 bone, 1 silver. He chose the bone. The city deserved living stories. As the parade rolled, Marcus blew the opening riff of "When the Saints Go Marching In," but halfway through he veered off, composing on the fly, folding in carnival barkers, garbage truck hydraulics, the laughter of kids atop ladders catching beads. Behind him, brass and percussion followed, uncertain but eager. Spectators recognized nothing, yet felt everything. Spectators recognized nothing. Strangers kissed. Old rivals hugged. Even cops bobbed their heads, pretending not to. Out in the swamps, Boudreaux the crawfish trapper who'd witnessed Gators marking time paused from hauling nets. A breeze carried distant trombone phrases across miles of cattails. He smiled. Among the knobby logs lining the bank, one enormous alligator tapped its tail, keeping perfect 4/4, listening to a story it had never heard told that way before.